The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was bigger than most planets. Thousands of alien beings floated, crawled, and walked across its shining floors. Representatives from 47 different star systems had come together for their monthly meeting. The air hummed with translators working overtime to change words between hundreds of different languages. Elder Vexthera was the oldest being in the galaxy. Her body looked like living crystal that glowed with soft blue light. She had seen civilizations rise and fall for millions of years. Most council members thought she was just a relic from the past. They listened to her out of respect, but they never really believed her stories. Today was different. Vexthera stood up from her ancient throne, and her crystal body pulsed brighter than usual. The massive hall fell silent. Even the youngest council members knew something important was about to happen. "The humans are coming," she said. Her voice was quiet, but everyone heard it clearly. "They have learned to travel between stars. Soon they will find us." Ambassador Zephalon from the powerful hegemony laughed. He was a tall purple creature with 6 arms that moved like snakes. "Elder, you worry too much. We have watched these humans for many years. They are primitive. Their fastest ships barely move compared to ours. They still fight with metal bullets and chemical explosives." Other council members nodded and made sounds of agreement. The humans were nothing special. They lived on one small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy. Their technology was thousands of years behind the most advanced civilizations. What threat could they possibly be? Vexthera's glow dimmed and her crystal body seemed to droop with sadness. That is exactly what the Krextani Empire said when they first met humans 3 million years ago. The hall erupted into noise. Every being started talking at once. The Krextani were legends. They had been the most powerful military force in galactic history. Their fleets had conquered half the known galaxy before they mysteriously disappeared. The official records said they had evolved beyond physical form and moved to a higher dimension. "The humans did not destroy the Krextani with better weapons," Vexthera continued. "They destroyed them with something far more dangerous. The humans simply refused to give up." She activated a holographic display that showed images from ancient archives. The council members saw recordings of the human homeworld from millions of years ago. It looked different then, with strange continents and primitive cities. When the Krextani first arrived at Earth, they expected easy conquest, Vexthera explained. The humans had barely discovered fire. They lived in small tribes and fought with wooden spears. The Krextani thought it would take 1 day to subdue them. The hologram showed Krextani ships landing on Earth. They were massive vessels that dwarfed anything humans had built. The Krextani soldiers were twice as tall as humans and covered in natural armor. They carried energy weapons that could melt stone. "The first battle lasted 6 hours, Vexthera said. The Krextani killed thousands of humans with minimal losses. By all logical calculations, the war should have ended that day. But the humans did not surrender. The hologram showed what happened next. Instead of giving up, the humans scattered into their forests and mountains. They began what they called guerrilla warfare. Small groups of humans would attack Krextani patrols and then disappear. They learned to make traps from simple materials. They studied their enemies and found weaknesses. The Krextani tried to force surrender by destroying human settlements, Vexthera continued. They burned entire forests. They poisoned rivers. They killed anyone who resisted. But this only made the humans more determined. The hologram showed human survivors emerging from hidden caves and underground shelters. They had saved their children and elders. They had preserved their knowledge and their tools. Most importantly, they had learned from every attack. After 1 year, the Krextani controlled all major human settlements. But they could not control the humans themselves. Every day brought new attacks. Every night brought sabotage of their equipment. The humans had turned their entire planet into a trap. Ambassador Zephalon waved his arms dismissively. "Elder, these are just old stories. Even if they are true, the situation is completely different now. We have technologies the ancient Krextani never dreamed of. We can monitor entire star systems from light years away." Vexthera's crystal body pulsed with what might have been amusement. "The Krextani learned the same lesson you are about to learn. Human technology is not their greatest weapon. Their greatest weapon is their absolute refusal to accept defeat." She changed the holographic display to show more recent images. These were from the current time, showing the human homeworld as it existed now. The blue planet was covered with cities that sparkled with lights. Thousands of space stations orbited around it. The humans had built a civilization that spanned their entire solar system. 3 years ago, they achieved faster-than-light travel, Vexithara announced. 6 months ago, they sent their first exploration ships beyond their solar system. Today, their scouts are already mapping the outer territories of hegemony space. This caused another eruption of noise in the council hall. If humans were already exploring beyond their home system, first contact was no longer a distant possibility. It was inevitable. "What do you suggest we do?" asked the representative from the Crystalline Confederation. She was a being made of living glass who spoke in musical tones. "We should establish peaceful contact immediately," Vexithara replied. "We should treat them as equals, not as primitives to be conquered or controlled. We should learn from the fate of the Krextani." Ambassador Zephlon stood up, all 6 of his arms gesturing angrily. "That is impossible. The hegemony has never treated a primitive species as an equal. It would set a dangerous precedent. Every backwards planet would expect the same treatment. Then you will suffer the same fate as the Krextani," Vexithara said simply. The argument continued for hours. Some council members supported Vexithara's warning. They had heard whispers about the true fate of the Krextani Empire. But most dismissed her concerns as the fears of an ancient being who had lived too long and seen too much. In the end, the council voted to handle the humans according to standard protocols. They would wait for human contact, demonstrate galactic superiority, and then offer the humans a choice: submit to galactic authority or face the consequences. As the meeting ended and council members began to leave, Vexithara remained on her throne. Her crystal body had grown dim with sorrow. A young aide approached her cautiously. "Elder, do you really believe the humans are that dangerous?" Vexithara looked at him with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. "Child, in all my years I have seen only one species that treats survival as an absolute duty rather than a mere preference. I have seen only one species that considers death preferable to surrender. I have seen only one species that becomes more dangerous the more desperate it becomes." She paused, her crystal form flickering like a dying star. "The galaxy is about to learn what the Krextani learned too late. When humans say they will fight to the last person standing, they mean it literally, and when the last person falls, their children will pick up their weapons and continue the fight." The aide left, troubled by her words. Vexithara remained alone in the vast hall, waiting for the inevitable. History was about to repeat itself, and once again, nobody would listen until it was too late. 2 years had passed since Elder Vexithara's warning to the Galactic Council. Most members had forgotten her words, dismissed as the ramblings of an ancient being who had lived too long. The galaxy continued its normal routines of trade, politics, and minor territorial disputes. Admiral Korthvex of the Hegemony Third Fleet was reviewing routine patrol reports when his communications officer announced an unexpected visitor. A ship had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of hegemony space. The vessel was unknown, using technology that did not match any registered civilization. "Display the ship on main screen," Korthvex ordered from his command chair. The view screen showed a crude-looking vessel that was barely larger than a hegemony patrol boat. Its hull was made of simple metal alloys that any advanced civilization had abandoned thousands of years ago. The ship had basic fusion engines and primitive gravity generators that leaked energy signatures across multiple spectrums. "Sir, the vessel is transmitting on multiple frequencies," reported the communications officer. "They are broadcasting mathematical sequences in 17 different formats. It appears to be a universal greeting protocol." Korthvex studied the alien ship with amusement. It was clearly built by a species that had just achieved interstellar travel. The design was functional but inefficient, like something a child might build from scrap metal. Whoever these aliens were, they were certainly not a threat to hegemony superiority. "Open a channel," he commanded. A woman appeared on the screen. She had the pale skin and dark hair typical of several known humanoid species. She wore a simple blue uniform with minimal decorations. Her expression was calm and professional, showing no signs of fear or submission that most primitive species displayed when meeting advanced civilizations. "This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the Terran Federation Starship Determination," she said in clear, precise tones. "We come seeking peaceful contact and trade relationships with the galactic community. We transmit our credentials and peaceful intentions." Korthvex almost laughed out loud. The woman spoke as if her tiny ship represented a legitimate government. She acted like the hegemony was just another trading partner, instead of the dominant military force in this region of space. Captain Rodriguez, he replied with barely concealed condescension. I am Admiral Korthvex of the Hegemony Third Fleet. Your vessel has entered restricted space without proper authorization. You will submit to escort and processing according to standard first contact protocols. The human woman nodded politely. We understand, Admiral. We are prepared to comply with your procedures. However, we would like to make one request if that is acceptable. Speak, Korthvex said, curious about what this primitive might want. We would like to document this process for our historical records, Captain Rodriguez explained. This is humanity's first official contact with galactic civilization. We want to preserve every detail for future generations. The Admiral found this request amusing. Most species begged for mercy during first contact. These humans wanted to take notes. He decided to grant their harmless request. Very well. You may record our procedures. Now power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted. We carry no weapons, Admiral, Rodriguez replied. The Determination is a purely exploratory vessel. This surprised Korthvex. What kind of species sent unarmed ships into unknown territory? Either these humans were incredibly naive, or they were more confident than they appeared. Within hours, a small hegemony fleet had surrounded the human ship and escorted it to Processing Station 7. This was where the hegemony evaluated new species and determined their place in the galactic hierarchy. The process was routine and had been repeated thousands of times over the centuries. What Korthvex did not know was that the human ship carried advanced passive sensors that recorded everything. Every scan of hegemony vessels revealed their shield frequencies, weapon specifications, and tactical capabilities. Every formation the escort fleet used was analyzed and transmitted to hidden relay stations throughout human space. The humans were not just documenting first contact for historical purposes. They were conducting the most comprehensive intelligence operation in galactic history. At Processing Station 7, Captain Rodriguez and her crew were treated according to standard protocols. They were housed in comfortable quarters, given tours of the facility, and introduced to representatives of various galactic civilizations. The humans appeared impressed by advanced technology and grateful for the educational opportunities. 3 days later, hegemony bureaucrats presented the standard integration agreement. Like all primitive species, the humans would become a client civilization under hegemony protection. They would provide raw materials and labor in exchange for access to advanced technology and galactic trade networks. The terms were generous by hegemony standards, allowing the humans to maintain local self-government while accepting hegemony oversight of all major decisions. Captain Rodriguez read the agreement carefully. She asked several clarifying questions about specific clauses. She requested time to consult with her crew. Finally, she looked up at the hegemony negotiator with the same calm expression she had maintained throughout the process. This agreement is unacceptable, she said politely. The hegemony negotiator was stunned. In 5,000 years of first contact procedures, no primitive species had ever rejected the integration agreement. The terms were fair and provided benefits that most civilizations took centuries to achieve on their own. Captain, I think you misunderstand the situation, the negotiator explained patiently. The hegemony is offering your species incredible opportunities. We are providing technology that would advance your civilization by thousands of years. We understand the offer, Rodriguez replied, but the Terran Federation does not accept subordinate status to any foreign power. We seek partnership between equals, not vassalage. The negotiator's patience began to wear thin. Captain, your species has 12 billion individuals on 47 primitive worlds. The hegemony encompasses thousands of star systems with a combined population in the trillions. We possess technology that could destroy your entire civilization without effort. You are hardly in a position to demand equal treatment. Captain Rodriguez stood up and straightened her simple uniform. Sir, I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding about human nature. We do not base our diplomatic positions on relative military strength. We base them on principle. And what principle is that? The negotiator asked. That freedom is not negotiable, Rodriguez answered. We would rather die free than live as subjects. Admiral Korthvex received the report of the failed negotiations with growing anger. These primitives had been offered everything they could possibly want, and they had rejected it out of sheer arrogance. They needed to be taught a lesson about galactic realities. He ordered the human ship impounded and its crew detained pending further negotiations. Perhaps a few days in holding cells would make them more reasonable. The determination submitted to capture without resistance. Its crew was processed and confined according to standard procedures. Captain Rodriguez's final transmission to her ship was a simple code phrase: "The weather is beautiful on Earth today." To hegemony monitors, it sounded like a harmless personal message. But to the listening post hidden throughout human space, it was the activation code for Protocol 7, Demonstration of Resolve. Within hours, every human colony had received the signal. Emergency governments took control. Civilian industries converted to military production. Construction of warships began in shipyards that had been disguised as mining facilities. The Terran Federation had been preparing for this moment since first achieving interstellar travel. Human history was filled with examples of advanced civilizations conquering primitive ones. They had studied every possible scenario and prepared accordingly. If the galaxy wanted to treat humanity as a primitive species to be conquered, then humanity would show them what a primitive species was truly capable of when its survival was threatened. The war for human independence was about to begin, and the galaxy would learn that their greatest mistake was underestimating the human capacity for absolute determination. 6 months had passed since the capture of the human ship Determination. Admiral Korthvex had reported the incident to Hegemony High Command and requested permission to deal with the human problem permanently. However, the High Command was distracted by a much larger crisis. The Vorthak Collective, the Hegemony's oldest enemy, had launched a massive military offensive across the disputed border territories. Entire star systems were under attack. The Third Fleet was urgently needed to reinforce the front lines. The human situation would have to wait. This decision would prove to be the greatest strategic mistake in Hegemony history. During those 6 months, strange reports began filtering in from Hegemony border stations. Patrol ships detected unknown vessels at the extreme edge of sensor range. These ships appeared briefly, conducted detailed scans, and then vanished before intercept forces could respond. The vessels were clearly human in origin, but each one had a different design. Intelligence analysts were puzzled by this behavior. Normal reconnaissance missions used standardized ships to gather specific information. The humans seemed to be testing dozens of different ship designs simultaneously, as if they were rapidly evolving their technology through trial and error. "Sir, we have another report from Border Station 12, reported Lieutenant Vexdown during the morning briefing. They detected 7 human vessels conducting scans of our defensive positions. When our patrol ships responded, the humans retreated, but not before launching several probe devices." Admiral Korthvex studied the tactical display with growing concern. Red dots marked every location where human ships had been detected over the past month. The pattern covered hundreds of star systems along the Hegemony border. "What kind of information are they gathering?" he asked. "Everything, sir," replied his intelligence officer. "Defense positions, patrol routes, supply line logistics, industrial facilities, communication networks. It appears they are mapping our entire infrastructure in minute detail." This was not the behavior of a primitive species. Advanced civilizations spent years planning military operations. The humans were conducting the most comprehensive intelligence operation in galactic history, and they were doing it with remarkable speed and efficiency. The first human attack came at the worst possible moment. The Third Fleet was deep in Vorthak territory, engaged in a crucial battle for the Proxima system. The fleet's supply base was located at Staging Area 7, a massive complex of fuel depots, repair facilities, and ammunition stockpiles. 12 human ships appeared without warning in the middle of the heavily defended facility. They were unlike anything in Hegemony records. Each vessel had a unique configuration, obviously designed for specific mission requirements. Some were built for speed, others for firepower, and several appeared to be specialized for close-range operations. The base's defensive systems responded immediately, but the humans had done their homework. They knew exactly where every weapon emplacement was located. They knew the response times of the defense fleet. They had studied the facility's weaknesses for months, but instead of attacking the military targets, the humans did something that made no sense by traditional warfare standards. They ignored the defensive ships and weapon platforms entirely. Instead, they systematically destroyed every fuel depot, every repair dock, and every supply warehouse in the facility. The attack lasted 18 minutes. When it was over, the human ships vanished as suddenly as they had appeared. They left behind no prisoners and took no captured materials. The base's defenses were intact, but the facility was completely useless. Admiral Korthvex received the report while his fleet was still engaged with Vorthak forces. Without the supply base, his ships would run out of fuel and ammunition within days. He had no choice but to withdraw from the battle and retreat to friendly territory. "Sir, this makes no strategic sense," protested his tactical officer. The humans gained no territory. They captured no resources. They eliminated no significant military assets. What was the point? Before Korthvex could answer, more reports began flooding in. Human ships were attacking targets across hegemony space, but not in any pattern that made military sense. They hit communication relays instead of command centers. They destroyed industrial facilities instead of military bases. They targeted supply convoys instead of warships. They are not trying to conquer us, Korthvex realized with growing horror. They are trying to make it impossible for us to function as a military force. His intelligence officer pulled up a strategic analysis on the main display. "Sir, our computers have identified their strategy. They call it systematic degradation warfare. Instead of defeating our military directly, they are destroying our ability to supply, communicate with, and coordinate our forces." The display showed hundreds of red markers indicating successful human attacks over the past week. Each attack was precisely targeted to cause maximum disruption with minimal human casualties. The humans were not fighting like a primitive species trying to survive. They were fighting like an advanced civilization implementing a carefully planned strategy. "How many ships do they have?" Korthvex demanded. "Unknown, sir. Our intelligence estimates suggest their entire civilization has converted to a war economy. Every industrial facility, every orbital platform, every mining operation is now producing military equipment. They are not building a single large fleet. They are building thousands of specialized task forces." This revelation shook Korthvex to his core. The hegemony had been expecting to face a desperate species making a final stand with whatever ships they could scrape together. Instead, they were fighting an enemy that had turned their entire society into a war machine. "What are our casualty projections?" he asked. The intelligence officer hesitated before answering. "Sir, based on current loss rates and enemy production capacity, the humans will achieve numerical superiority over our combined fleets within 2 years. If they maintain their current tactics, our military effectiveness will drop below critical levels within 8 months." The numbers were impossible to accept. How could a species with 12 billion individuals pose an existential threat to a civilization with trillions of citizens and thousands of years of military experience? "There must be an error in the calculations," Korthvex insisted. "Sir, we have verified the analysis multiple times," the officer replied. "The humans have advantages we never considered. Every one of their ships is designed to be self-sufficient. They do not require complex supply lines because they can manufacture replacement parts from asteroid materials. Every engagement teaches them something new about our capabilities, while we learn nothing useful about theirs because they never use the same ship design twice." Admiral Korthvex stared at the tactical display, showing the rapid degradation of hegemony military capability. For the first time in his career, he was beginning to understand what Elder Vexthara had tried to warn the Galactic Council about. The humans were not fighting to win territory or capture resources. They were fighting to ensure their enemies could no longer threaten them. It was not conquest. It was systematic elimination of opposition. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from Hegemony High Command," announced the communications officer. The message was brief and devastating. 3 other major galactic powers had reported similar attacks. The humans were simultaneously conducting warfare against multiple civilizations across hundreds of star systems. Somehow they had the industrial capacity and military capability to fight the entire galaxy at once. As reports continued to flood in, Admiral Korthvex began to realize the true scope of human preparation. This was not a desperate last stand by a primitive species. This was the execution of a comprehensive strategy that had been years in the making. The humans had studied galactic history. They had learned from the fate of every species that had been conquered or absorbed by advanced civilizations. They had prepared for the day when the galaxy would discover humanity and decide its fate. And they had decided that if the galaxy would not accept them as equals, then the galaxy would learn to fear them as enemies. The war for human survival had become a war for galactic survival, and the humans were winning. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos. Representatives from dozens of civilizations spoke over each other in languages that the translation systems could barely keep up with. The great hall that had once symbolized galactic unity now echoed with fear and desperation. Elder Vexithara sat on her ancient throne, her crystal body pulsing with dim light. Around her, the most powerful beings in the galaxy argued like frightened children. She had lived through this exact scenario before, but none of them would listen to her warnings then, and they were too proud to admit their mistakes now. The Hegemony Third Fleet has been completely neutralized, announced Ambassador Zephlon, his 6 arms trembling with barely controlled rage. Our military effectiveness has dropped by 60% in just 4 months. The humans are systematically destroying our ability to defend our own territory. The representative from the Crystalline Confederation chimed in with musical tones that reflected panic. Our deep space monitoring stations report hundreds of human vessels operating throughout our sphere of influence. They appear and disappear at will. Our fleets cannot intercept them. How is this possible? Demanded the delegate from the Zephyrian Republic. Intelligence reports indicate that the humans number only 12 billion individuals across 47 worlds. We have populations in the trillions spread across thousands of star systems. How can such a small species threaten us all simultaneously? Elder Vexithara finally spoke, her ancient voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. You are still thinking like civilized beings. You assume the humans are fighting to preserve their comfortable way of life. You cannot understand an enemy that has accepted the complete destruction of everything they know as an acceptable price for survival. The hall fell silent as her words sank in. The assembled representatives had spent their entire lives in civilizations that valued stability, prosperity, and gradual progress. The concept of sacrificing everything for a military objective was alien to their way of thinking. "Explain," demanded the High Executor of the Vorthak Collective, speaking through a holographic projection from his fortress world. Vexthara activated the chamber's central display system. Images appeared showing human colonies across their territory. But these were not the civilized worlds the Council expected to see. Every planet had been converted into a massive military-industrial complex. Cities had been torn down and replaced with weapons factories. Peaceful farms had become training grounds for soldiers. Orbital habitats that once housed families now served as shipyards. The humans have done something that no other species in galactic history has attempted, Vexithara explained. They have voluntarily transformed their entire civilization into a military machine. Every human settlement can function as an independent war base. Every civilian facility can be converted to military production within days. The images showed human children learning to operate manufacturing equipment alongside their regular education. Elderly humans working in ammunition plants. Scientists abandoning peaceful research to design new weapon systems. An entire species had willingly given up everything that made life worth living in, order to ensure their species' survival. "This is madness," whispered the Zephyrian delegate. "What kind of species destroys its own way of life to fight a war?" "A species that understands the mathematics of extinction," Vexithara replied. "The humans have calculated that losing their current civilization is acceptable if it prevents the complete destruction of their species. They are not fighting to protect what they have. They are fighting to ensure that something of humanity survives." The Vorthak High Executor leaned forward in his projection. "Our military analysts have run comprehensive projections based on observed human capabilities. If they maintain current production rates and loss ratios, they will achieve numerical superiority over all combined galactic fleets within 18 months. This announcement caused another eruption of panicked voices. The idea that a primitive species could outproduce the combined military might of galactic civilization was impossible to accept. "The logistics alone make this impossible," protested several delegates. "You misunderstand human logistics," the Vorthak continued with his species' characteristic bluntness. "They do not use centralized supply lines that can be disrupted. Every human fleet is designed to be completely self-sufficient. They have created ships that can be manufactured from raw asteroid materials, using portable fabrication systems. Any debris field becomes a potential shipyard. Any captured enemy vessel becomes raw materials for new construction. Elder Vexithara nodded approvingly. The Vorthak understand because they are warriors themselves. The humans have solved the fundamental problem of interstellar warfare. How to maintain military production while your infrastructure is under attack. They have made their entire species into a distributed military-industrial complex that cannot be destroyed by conventional means. The tactical implications were staggering. Traditional warfare relied on disrupting enemy supply lines and industrial capacity. The humans had made themselves immune to such strategies by eliminating centralized vulnerabilities. "What do they want?" asked the Crystalline Confederation representative. Surely they must have some demands, some terms for ending this conflict. Vexithara's crystal form dimmed with what might have been sorrow. They want what they have always wanted. Recognition as equals. The right to exist as a sovereign species without interference. The same things they asked for during first contact, which you denied them. But the situation has changed, protested Ambassador Zephlon. We understand now that we underestimated their capabilities. Surely we can negotiate new terms. Can you? Vexithara challenged. You have spent months demonstrating that you consider them an inferior species to be conquered or controlled. You imprisoned their diplomats. You rejected their peaceful overtures. You forced them to choose between submission and war. Why should they believe that any new agreement would be honored? The truth of her words hung heavy in the air. Every species represented in the council had spent generations conquering or absorbing primitive civilizations. The galactic order was built on the assumption that advanced species had the right to dominate less developed ones. The humans were challenging the fundamental basis of galactic civilization. There must be a solution, insisted the Zephyrian delegate. This cannot continue indefinitely. The humans must eventually exhaust their resources. The Vorthak High Executor activated his own display, showing detailed analysis of human industrial capacity. Our projections suggest otherwise. The humans have implemented what they call exponential warfare doctrine. Every captured enemy ship provides materials for building multiple new human vessels. Every successful engagement teaches them to design more effective weapons. They are not depleting their resources. They are growing stronger with each battle. The mathematical models showed terrifying projections. Within 2 years, human fleets would outnumber all galactic forces combined. Within 5 years, their technological advancement through combat experience would make them superior to any individual galactic power. Within 10 years, they would possess the capability to systematically eliminate any species that threatened them. This is not warfare, whispered one delegate. This is evolution. Elder Vexithara stood up from her throne, her ancient form towering over the assembled representatives. Now you begin to understand what I tried to warn you about. The humans are not fighting this war to win territory or resources. They are fighting to prove that they cannot be conquered. Every victory demonstrates to the galaxy that humanity is not a species that can be safely threatened. She paused, her crystal body pulsing with the accumulated wisdom of millions of years. You created this situation by refusing to accept them as equals when they asked peacefully. Now they are forcing you to accept them as superiors through military might. The choice is no longer yours to make. The council chamber fell into stunned silence as the reality of their situation became clear. They had created an enemy that could not be defeated through conventional means. The humans had transformed themselves into something unprecedented in galactic history, a species willing to sacrifice everything to ensure their survival. And the mathematics clearly showed that unless something changed dramatically, humanity would not merely survive. They would emerge from this conflict as the dominant military power in the galaxy. The age of galactic civilization as they knew it was ending, and something new and terrifying was about to begin. 18 months after the first human attack, Captain Elena Rodriguez stood in the same Galactic Council chamber where Elder Vexithara had once issued her unheeded warnings. The Great Hall was much emptier now. Many civilizations had fled to distant regions of the galaxy, rather than face continued human expansion. Others had simply ceased to exist as independent entities. Rodriguez appeared exactly as she had during first contact. She wore the same simple blue uniform with minimal decorations. Her expression remained calm and professional. The only difference was that now every remaining delegate in the council watched her with the careful attention usually reserved for natural disasters. Behind her stood 2 other humans in similar uniforms. They carried no visible weapons and made no threatening gestures. Their mere presence was threat enough. Everyone in the chamber knew that human fleets now controlled key strategic positions throughout the galaxy. The Terran Federation requests recognition of our sovereignty and equal status within the galactic community, Rodriguez announced in the same clear, precise tone she had used during her first diplomatic mission. We believe the initial misunderstandings during first contact can now be resolved. The chamber was absolutely silent. In the 18 months since the conflict began, 4 major galactic powers had surrendered unconditionally. The mighty hegemony had been dissolved, its territory divided among human colonies. The crystalline confederation had fled beyond the galactic rim. 2 entire species had chosen extinction rather than submit to human terms. Ambassador Zeflon, one of the few original council members still present, finally found his voice. What are your terms? The proud being who had once laughed at human primitiveness now spoke in barely audible whispers. Rodriguez consulted a simple paper notebook, the same affectation that had once made her seem primitive but now somehow made her appear more dangerous. Our requirements are quite reasonable. Full recognition of human sovereignty over our current territory, equal representation in galactic governance structures, formal acknowledgement of our right to exist as an independent species. Several delegates began to nod eagerly. After months of systematic military defeats, these terms seemed almost generous. Additionally, Rodriguez continued in the same conversational tone, we require implementation of the Human Protection Doctrine. Any species or organization that engages in unprovoked aggression against human colonies, vessels, or citizens will be subject to immediate and complete military neutralization. The word neutralization sent a chill through the chamber. Everyone knew what human neutralization meant. It did not mean conquest or occupation. It meant the systematic dismantling of an entire civilization's ability to pose a threat. To assist with understanding the implications of this doctrine, Rodriguez continued, we have prepared detailed projections for each remaining galactic civilization. She activated the chamber's holographic display system. Mathematical models appeared showing fleet deployment patterns, industrial capacity calculations, and timelines for what human military planners called threat elimination protocols. The projections were thorough, methodical, and absolutely terrifying in their casual precision. The models showed how human forces would systematically destroy every military installation, every industrial facility, and every technological infrastructure of any species that violated the protection doctrine. The calculations included projected human casualties, resource requirements, and estimated completion times. The humans had turned genocide into an engineering problem. These projections are not threats, Rodriguez explained helpfully. They are planning documents. Human military doctrine requires detailed preparation for all possible contingencies. We prefer not to use these plans, but they exist if circumstances require their implementation. Elder Vexithara, who had remained silent throughout the proceedings, finally spoke. The humans have taught us something valuable about the nature of power. True strength is not the ability to destroy your enemies. It is the ability to make destruction unnecessary by making the cost of opposition too high to consider. Rodriguez nodded respectfully toward the ancient being. Elder Vexithara has understood human nature from the beginning. We have never sought conquest or domination. We seek only the right to exist without interference. But we have learned that this right must sometimes be defended with absolute force. She turned back to address the full council. The Terran Federation hopes that formal diplomatic recognition will make demonstrations of our defensive capabilities unnecessary in the future. We much prefer building civilizations to destroying them. She paused, consulting her notebook again with the same casual gesture that had once seemed quaint, but now carried implications of measured calculation. However, our military conversion protocols remain in place indefinitely. We have discovered that maintaining the capability for total warfare is the most effective way to ensure peace. Our industrial infrastructure can return to full war production within 72 hours if circumstances require it. The message was unmistakably clear. The humans had proven they could destroy galactic civilization if threatened. Now they were offering to help rebuild it instead. The choice belonged to everyone else, but the consequences of choosing wrong had been mathematically demonstrated. We accept your terms, the Zephyrian delegate said quickly, speaking for most of the chamber. The Galactic Council formally recognizes human sovereignty and equal status. Other delegates rushed to voice their agreement. The vote was unanimous, though everyone understood it was not really a vote. It was an acknowledgement of reality. As the formalities concluded, Rodriguez made one final observation. For the historical record, humanity entered this conflict with 12 billion individuals across 47 worlds. We now number 8 billion across 132 worlds. The difference represents our acceptable losses in defense of our species' survival. The casual mention of 4 billion human casualties, delivered in the same tone as a weather report, sent a final chill through the chamber. The humans had not merely been willing to sacrifice everything for their freedom. They had actually done it. 4 billion people had died to prove that humanity could not be conquered. We hope, Rodriguez continued, that future diplomatic relations will not require such demonstrations of resolve. The Terran Federation looks forward to peaceful cooperation with all galactic civilizations that respect our sovereignty. Elder Vexithara settled back into her ceremonial throne as the session ended. Her crystal form flickered with something that might have been satisfaction. After millions of years, someone had finally listened to her warnings about human nature. It was just too late for it to matter to the civilizations that had learned the lesson. As the council members filed out of the chamber, they carried with them the knowledge that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The age of advanced civilizations conquering primitive ones was over. In its place was a new paradigm where survival depended not on technological superiority, but on the wisdom to recognize when an opponent was willing to pay any price to remain free. The humans had not conquered the galaxy. They had simply made it clear that anyone who threatened them would cease to exist. In the end, that distinction proved to be irrelevant. Peace had returned to the galaxy, enforced by the absolute certainty that breaking it would result in absolute destruction. The humans had achieved through demonstrated capability what diplomatic negotiations had failed to accomplish. They had earned the right to exist as equals, and everyone understood that this right would be defended with the same mathematical precision and unlimited determination that had characterized their war for independence. The galaxy was safer now, because everyone knew exactly what the consequences of making it unsafe would be, and in her ancient wisdom, Elder Vexithara understood that this had always been the only possible outcome once the humans decided that their survival was not negotiable. The age of human expansion was just beginning.